Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our discussion today about building consumer confidence in coloured gemstone trading. It promises to be a fascinating discussion, and I'm delighted to be joined by three very distinguished panelists. I'd like to first introduce Iris Van der Veken, Executive Director of the Responsible Jewellery Council. Hello, Iris, how are you today?
Well, I'm well, and thank you for inviting me, and hello from Belgium.
And next, I would like to introduce Mr. Sumed, Director of the GIT, the Institute of Gems and Jewellery in Bangkok. Hello, Mr. Sumed.
Hi, good afternoon. Very good. Yep.
Glad to have you with us. And last but not least, I would like to introduce Tony Brooke, who is Vice President of the Thai Gem and Jewellery Traders Association and also Chairman of Gembridge, a digital trading platform for gems, pearls and jewellery. Hello, Tony.
Good evening, David, and good evening, everyone from Bangkok and indeed in Thai. Sawadee Kap, Tuk Tan Kap.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much. So first off, we would like to show a video from the Responsible Jewellery Council. So here it is.
Jewellery has always played a special role in people's lives, carrying personal and emotional significance. The story behind the jewellery is often as precious to us as the jewellery itself. People want to know where their jewellery comes from, how it is made, and who has had a hand in crafting it. We were founded in 2005 by 14 members with a pioneering vision that all jewellery should be produced responsibly, helping people prosper and preserving the planet. Now, more than 1,200 members share our vision of a responsible worldwide supply chain that promotes trust in the global jewellery and watch industry. This vision has never been more relevant than today. Our members are companies from all over the world, big and small, working together to make sure that every link of jewellery and watch supply chains is responsible, continuously improving their management systems and adhering to the RJC Code of Practices. We have set the global standard for the responsible jewellery and watch industry, the only one to cover the full chain from mine to consumer. Our further alignment with the OECD due diligence and the UN guiding principles is a step forward in the long-term sustainability journey ahead. More companies becoming members means creating an even greater positive impact on the jewellery and watch industry. We are transforming the way we work with members to serve them better, and we will make our voice heard in the conversations that matter most, catalysing industry-wide progress. We care about people, peace, prosperity, and the planet, and are committed to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We stand up for integrity through our supply chains, in our work, and of our membership. Join us. Together, we are helping transform the world of jewellery for good and underpinning trust in the global jewellery and watch industry so our planet and communities flourish. And people continue to hold jewellery close to their hearts for centuries to come.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that video from the RJC. So I'd like to turn next to Iris, Executive Director of the Responsible Jewellery Council. Iris, before we just get into the detail of coloured gemstones, I know that sustainability is very, very important to you. You're very passionate about it. And I'm just wondering how you see sustainability evolving during this crisis, during the pandemic. What are your thoughts?
Well, of course, sustainability, as I think, is at the heart of confidence. And we work in an industry of beauty and emotions. So when someone walks into a boutique or a store or will buy something online, they will have to have confidence in the organization, but also confidence in the process and in the people and how that affected livelihoods. And I think what we've seen, as you know, and I would like to take one step back, is that in 2015, I would say the sustainability agenda of the world was defined, which is called the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It's really the roadmap of leaving no one behind. And it is a roadmap of people, planet, peace, prosperity, and partnerships. And 2020 is defined as a decade of action. And then COVID came, the worst economic and social crisis in generations. And I think that's why probably, you know, the RJC has done a lot of advocacy, because I think we're at a critical moment. Also in our industry, a lot of work has been done, but now we need to accelerate efforts and really go into a profound and systematic shift in any organization, small and large, to really integrate sustainability at the heart of their business strategy. And we know that takes time. It's challenging because, you know, supply chains are complex. And I think definitely, you know, with these experts today around the table, colored gemstones also with such a big part of the chain, Artisanal, how can we bring along everyone on that journey so that we're inclusive? And maybe one more thought I want to share is also it's about partnerships and collaboration. I think, you know, we are very happy, you know, to be sitting here with Mr. Tony Brooke and Mr. Soumet, but also I recognize the excellent work being done, for example, by SIPJO. We all need to have, you know, the sustainability as a priority on our agenda as organizations.
Thank you, Iris. So turning now to colored gemstones specifically, this is a really critical time due to the pandemic. Business in the normal sense, as we have known it, is not taking place in the usual way. It is very difficult for people to travel. So to physically source colored gemstones, for example, it's very hard to do it in the time-honored way of flying into a country and, say, visiting a mine. Now, the artisanal sector accounts for roughly 85% of global output of colored gemstones at artisanal small-scale mining. Could you tell us, Iris, what is the RJC's mission to support the artisanal mining sector in colored gemstones?
Well, I think that first of all, we are an organization that was founded based on a multi-stakeholder approach. And we believe, you know, it will only be, we will only succeed if we have a collaborative multi-stakeholder partnership, including the mining communities, the traders, the dealers, the manufacturers, and the NGOs. And we know indeed that COVID has had this disproportionate impact on ASM communities, especially on women. So what we believe is that we need to, first of all, do more engagement to rebuild better. So with organizations on the ground, I think also what is needed is very strong and consistent government policies, because we will not be able to do it alone. You know, it's not going to be a model of only the private sector. So the question is now, because of the complexity, how can we bring everyone around the table? And I think what the RJC is willing to do, we have so much knowledge and expertise of what we've built on the code of practices, you know, from mining to retail, and how can we use all of that expertise in helping to advance solutions for ASM.
What we're seeing now in this period has been an accelerating digital transformation of colored gemstone trading. So we've seen a few groups emerge in the United States. A group called Jewelers Circle has emerged. There's also a group called GemCloud, which will be announcing, I believe, on the 12th of November. And now Gembridge, and of course we have Tony with us, whom I'll be speaking with shortly, who is the chairman of Gembridge, which is a very well-backed platform for the trading of colored gemstones, pearls and jewellery, and Gembridge was formally announced yesterday. So Iris, if I may ask you, given that this digital transformation is now speeding up in the coloured gemstone world, how will the RJC's role evolve during this digital transformation of coloured gemstone trading?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity for the RJC to work together with organizations that are going full speed ahead with digital transformation. Because at the end of the day, it is about, it's about consumer confidence. That means is that every step before that consumer, B2B has to be very carefully managed, and there needs to be systems behind that. And I think that we have a great opportunity with the code of practices to give that framework to technology platforms to see how indeed organizations can adhere to that code, show supporting proof points, and also measure on progress. I think that's also a great opportunity to see, how our organizations evolving year by year. So, we see it as, we embrace technology and innovation, and we also believe that that's the only way forward.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So now we're going to move to a second video, which is the video of the GIT, the Institute for Gems and Jewellery of Thailand. And then I'm going to have a little bit of a dialogue with Mr. Sumed. So can we please see the video from the GIT?
Okay, yep.
From determination to our pride, it has been over 2 decades that the Gem and Jewellery Institute of Thailand public organization has been driving Thai gem and jewellery industry forward through our missions and several activities such as International Trade Fair and Academic Conference. Establish confidence among entrepreneurs, strengthen standard and competitiveness of gem and jewellery industry to position Thailand as world's gems and jewellery trading hub. The Gem and Jewellery Institute of Thailand Public Organization, or GIT, is Thailand's national institute to support gem and jewellery industry. GIT Gem and Jewellery Identification Report is essential for gem and jewellery business nowadays. GIT operates by highly experienced gemologists and precious metal specialists with state-of-the-art laboratory equipment with international standard. GIT also conducts research to support gem and jewellery testing service. GIT's Coloured Stone Master Standard is one of our milestones invented to identify trade name of coloured stone and create correct understanding in the market. GIT provides comprehensive training courses covered all aspects from upstream to downstream and establishes self-learning center open for all who are interested in gem and jewellery business. GIT also annually organizes GIT World Jewelry Design Awards and Challenge Gem Faceting Master to bring opportunities for young generation to show their potential in the global level. Additionally, the Institute has implemented Gem Treasures to boost up potential of local entrepreneurs nationwide. and showcase products developed under this project in several marketing channels and platforms to sustainably increase income for communities. Trust and confidence is very important to strengthen Thai's gem and jewelry industry. Therefore, GIT has initiated Buy with Confidence to build up standard for gem and jewelry products to be accepted in international market. GIT is proud as being an important part to drive Thailand towards world's gem and jewelry trading hub. Your Gem, Your Pride, certified by GIT, the Gem and Jewellery Institute of Thailand, public organization.
Well, thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive video from the GIT. Welcome, Mr. Sumed. Glad to have you with us today.
Yes.
So let me ask you first, if I may, how do you see the GIT's role evolving during the rapid digital transformation of coloured gemstone trading? And what will be the role of an organisation like GIT in terms of instilling consumer confidence in coloured gemstone trading?
Okay. Well, for GIT, one of our mission is to establish the trust and confidence among the consumer. Right? We have initiated a Buy with Confidence campaign since 2018 under the collaboration with the Department of the Tourism of Thailand, the Office of the Consumer Protection Board, and also the Police Bureau here, right? To push the Buy with Confidence campaign nationwide, which is aimed to establish the trust and confidence in buying gem and jewelry products. Right? This campaign is applicable to today, the situation of the digital transformation, and the customer can access and verify the GIT gem and jewelry identification report online 24 hours and 7 days a week, right? By scanning the QR code at the product tags, right? From the participation store, the GIT member, the BWC member, right? In terms of responsibility and sustainability aspect, right? Last year, GIT had been invited to serve as an advisory committee member of the provenance proof, right? To use the blockchain technology to track back the color gemstone. This is also promoting the transparency in the gem and jewelry community. The main objective of developing the gem and jewelry industry for its supreme operability in the global markets. Right. This collaboration is very important stepping stone from Thai gem and jewelry industry, as it will be allow us to be in the front line of the technological disruption and have the concern of Thai gem and jewelry industry represented in the further development of the provenance proof platform, right? Serving with the independent blockchain system for the global gemstone and jewelry sector, provenance proof blockchain will be supervised by GIT and the multi-stakeholder advisory board to ensure effective and development of the maintenance. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And with regard to the GIT lab certification reports, I mean, do you sense that going forward that these, due to the very high volume of digitized color gemstone transactions that will likely take place, that these GIT reports could become lighter, but maybe less detailed due to the sheer volume of business that you will be handling digitally?
Well, all the information on the gem identification report will remain unchanged, right? To align with the online e-commerce trend, which is as you mentioned, it's very high volume. GIT recently launched a new product, like an e-report and a mini report that we can expedite our service to the customer and shorten the lead time, right? GAC is also only the laboratory who providing the jewelry report, which is combined gem and jewelry testing. Right, the jewelry report can meet online e-commerce platform, mostly like from the B2C client, that the consumer can verify the whole jewelry piece, both gemstone and precious metal, right? We also like mention for the purity of the metal, the metal in the jewelry setting on the report too.
And do you sense that you are moving to issuing just digitized lab reports going forward? Is that where you're headed, that there'll be no paper reports in the end, and that they will just be digital?
We do both, some customer is still providing the paper report, right? But mostly we try to implement to the online, the digital report. Right, and also we also plan to run the GAT report application, like maybe in next years. Like we are working it now, like trying to reduce the paper use and then trying to persuade the people to apply for that kind of online report instead of the paper report at the moment.
Well, thank you very much. If I may just turn to Tony now. Tony, if I may first ask you a question with your Vice President of the Thai Association of Gem and Jewellery Traders first. I mean, looking back in recent years at trade in coloured gemstones in Thailand, what would you say have been the biggest challenges in terms of building consumer confidence? And how are those challenges being overcome now?
Well, if I can just go back a little bit, historically, there were issues in Thailand and Asia in general with basically fake gemstones and fake jewelry, which were being sold as natural and real gemstones and jewelry. That, unfortunately, was still prevalent up until relatively recently. So that now most companies have to have absolutely strong due diligence. They're responsibly sourced gems and jewelry, and more importantly, all their merchandise needs to be independently verified by a laboratory that it is indeed a ruby or a sapphire or 18-karat jewelry with diamonds and whatever. And this has now been carried forward into the present trends. Shall we say China? They're now buying a lot of Thai gems and jewelry online, and to do such, they have to ensure that everything has an independent certificate of authenticity. And this needs to be verified prior to any goods being sent to the buyer in China. So I think this is something that, fortunately, Kun Sumet mentioned earlier, that they're very concerned about this. They're looking at the digital idea of having smaller laboratory certificates. But I think there's going to be a lot more development going forward, especially when the blockchain starts to come on board. But that's to be discussed at a later point.
All right. So your other hat is chairman of Gembridge, which is a new global platform for the trading of coloured gemstones, pearls, and jewellery, which was formally announced yesterday. Could I ask you, going forward, as we move into this rapidly changing world, this digital transformation of coloured gemstones trading, how do you build consumer confidence in this new world?
Well, right, trade with trust. This is one of the major facets of our platform, Gembridge. The most important thing really is to engender a situation whereby buyers and sellers worldwide can trade with trust. If I can try to explain that in very simple terms, we have a platform that has members who have all gone through a very strong due diligence process at a banking level. We are regulated by the Singapore Tax Authority. We ensure that all of our members go through a very rigid due diligence process before they can join the platform. So once they've joined, they then have to, we hope, go through the same rigid supply chain regimens that the RJC are promoting. This will allow that one company, shall we say, in Bangkok who's joined and there's a member in Switzerland, there's a ruby on our platform, they wish to buy it, or perhaps consign it. So they will click a button, say, yes, I'd like to consign, shall we say, that 3-carat ruby. The owner of the stone will then deposit that ruby at ICA laboratory here. It will already have, most likely, an independent certificate, shall we say, maybe a GIT certificate or an SSEF certificate. The ICA will then issue a verification report. This requires only a very short period of time to verify that the stone actually does correspond to the certificate that was issued by a third-party laboratory. Once that's been ascertained, it can then be collected by Brinks. It's fully insured. The whole transaction from buyer to seller is fully insured. It will then be sent to, shall we say, Geneva, where it can either, if it's a consignment, be looked or viewed at, shall we say, Brinks's viewing room. The buyer can view the stone, can make the final decision. Yes, that's what exactly the stone I want to buy, and they will pay for the stone. Only once the money has been received will it be released from the Brinks office. If, on the other hand, for whatever reason they decide they don't want to buy it, then the transaction doesn't go through, and it will be returned to Bangkok in full custody, and then eventually returned to the owner. Basically, what we're putting together is a situation whereby a buyer and a seller can both buy with trust and sell with trust, and be sure that the money they pay will actually buy what they anticipated buying. And this is something that's only really been possible over the last 3 to 5 years technologically. And I'm pleased to say that Gembridge and my fellow partners are bringing this amazing product to market at just the right time. As we all know, the COVID situation has really focused minds. People are not going to be able to travel probably for many years. And even when they are able to travel, I feel sure that with a platform like Gembridge, they'll much prefer to be able to trade with trust without having to leave the house. They can stay at home and take care of their young family or whatever. So that's basically what we aim to.
So building consumer confidence then is very much at the heart of what you have created with Gembridge. Very much so, very much so. I mean, I've been in the business nearly 40 years, and we need to shine a light on the murky corners of the gem and jewelry industry. We need to find a way that sustainability is is available to all. We have a situation where itinerant artisanal miners in Africa are having trouble getting onto the supply chain. The RJC are very active in promoting ways to find access points for SMEs to come on board and join the supply chain in a complicit manner with all the protocols in place. Know your client, anti-money laundering, corporate social responsibility, etc., etc., etc. So this is a major part of Gembridge's philosophy, and indeed we're very happy to be a part of this webinar today to support RJC, who we would hope will be supporting us and our members as we move forward together. And I understand that Gembridge is now a member of RJC. So how important is membership of RJC to Gembridge? I mean, why was this a key part of the strategy that you have driven forward? Well, we have the same philosophy, the same protocols in place. It's just that it needs to be expanded with all due respect from the large corporations and the brands. We, Gembridge, would like to think one day we will be a brand in our own right, a large brand, but we would like to think that we will, in doing so, ensure that all of our members are complicit with the same ideals that RJC is promoting worldwide, as I mentioned briefly earlier. And if we can find a way, eventually when we move to our B2C and C2C platform at the end of next year, we'd like to think that even at that point, we will find a way of allowing that these consumers will still be able to be responsibly selling their products with full disclosure and no opaqueness at all within the whole transaction. Good. Before I just turn on to Mr. Sumed, I'd like to invite the audience to submit questions for the Q&A. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end of our discussion. So please do drop questions about how you see the digital transformation of the industry impacting upon consumer confidence on the Q&A button. So, Mr. Sumed, if I may turn to you next, how do the GIT lab reports boost the confidence of consumers in a color gemstone transaction?
Okay, well, you know, the COVID-19 had disrupted most of the business. Like consumer behavior is totally changed, and online e-commerce become mainstream. Right? Inevitably of for gem and jewelry industry, many big brand, company, and SME are now focusing on the online platform. Due to this high value and the volume of the business, more and more customers are requesting identification report when purchasing the gem and jewelry product. This is showing that the gem identification report become more important than ever before, right? Not only increasing the trust and confidence among the consumer, having gem and jewelry identification report is also strengthening and enhancing the product brand image. And the young generation today, they are looking for the brand to pay more attention on the sustainability and transparency. Then it's necessary for a company to associate your brand and trust the gem that reputation. Right, this is the way that GIT try to make the report, boost the confidence to the market, to the consumer as well.
And would you say, Mr. Sumed, that as we enter into an increasingly digitized environment for colored gemstone trading, that a respected lab report by the GIT, for example, becomes increasingly important?
Right. Because like right now, when the transaction is moving from the physical store to the online store, like the report will help the consumer to make sure that okay, they get what they're trying to buy, right? The identification report is more important for the transaction, more important for the consumer when they're going to buy the gemstone or the jewelry set. They need something to identify the product. Right?
Okay, thank you very much. If I may turn to Iris now. Iris, what are the RJC's main priorities in terms of standard setting in colored gemstones?
Well, I want to go back to what Tony said about trading with trust and transparency, and that's based on responsible business practices. And I think the good thing is that the RJC has built over 15 years a very robust framework. The Code of Practices 2019, which is aligned with the OECD due diligence, which is aligned with the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. So you have this code, you have the framework, which is accessible on our website. You know, all material is in the open space, so anyone can use that, you know, to start a sustainability journey. I think our aim is really to bring everyone in the journey. I think that one thing that COVID has taught us is we need to build back better and we need to be resilient. And that I also want to, you know, to share indeed what Mr. Sumed says. At the end of the day, it is about consumer confidence. And we know that before COVID, the millennial and the Gen Z consumer was looking for purpose and wanted to understand, you know, what is the story behind the product and how does it impact livelihoods and communities on the ground positively, from doing no harm to doing good. So how can we bring the whole industry into that journey? So I think we have a huge opportunity there. And I also wanted to raise the point that when we talk about sustainability, we cannot see that in an isolated manner. We have to look at responsible mining, we have to look at due diligence, we have to look at human rights, labor rights, health and safety, product disclosure and integrity. So a lot of components are included, and it takes time to embed that as part of a core strategy of an organization. So I think another priority that we see as RJC is working in collaboration with other organizations such as CIPJO, GIT, ICA, ACTA, for working on educational material, developing practical tools, and also in that context, our Colored Gemstone Task Force has been working very hard and diligently on bringing new tools to our members, but also to the industry. So, just to recap, it is a process of continuous improvement. But I do say, there's no, we really, really need to move the agenda ahead together.
Well, you've spoken obviously about the importance of having a responsible supply chain. In terms, though, of extending your influence within the main production area of colored gemstones, which is mainly artisanal small-scale mining in developing countries, how can you potentially increase your membership and give your view about the importance of having a responsible supply chain to a sector that essentially is very unregulated, where a lot of the miners perhaps may be illiterate and very, very fragmented? How can you potentially boost your message and also potential membership of RJC in this very fragmented community of artisanal small-scale miners of colored gemstones?
Well, it's all about leadership. And I think it first starts with the organizations that are already member. If I look at Thailand, we're very proud. We have 50 members there. We continue to grow. I think it first starts through our own membership. And often they're working with other stakeholders. They're working in collaboration with other suppliers and subcontractors. So bringing them onto that journey through the members. I think, members get members. I think second, through collaboration and partnerships with governments. So I think that multi-stakeholder dialogue and consultation is critical. And again, I go back to what's happening with COVID, because everyone is looking at short-term measures, trying to see that we can continue to employ people or be able to manage short-term cash flow problems. But how can we really sit with governments also for long-term policies, to continue for communities to grow and to have livelihoods? And then, more delicate discussions sometimes come around the table on living index wage and other government policies. But again, we need to discuss these topics, public-private. And then finally, I think the trade associations around the world that I think have a huge opportunity to be an advocate for positive change. And the final thought, David, it is the consumer who will decide the markets. So at the essence, it's consumer confidence. If we don't have the confidence of our consumer, we will all not exist. And I think that's where I am confident, because I see this, younger consumer that is looking for the story of purpose. And I believe we really can take this historical crisis as an opportunity to build back better.
Yeah. And a number of studies have shown that millennial consumers, if anything, do want higher standards in terms of the gems that they are buying in jewellery, that they are demanding a high level of sustainability where possible in the supply chain. Let me move on to the Q&A. We have a few questions in from the audience, and I again do invite the audience to keep sending in these questions. I'm just going to take them from the top. Perhaps I'd like to ask Tony this one. Sonam Bateja is asking, Tony, how can the gems and jewellery sector revive during this crisis? I mean, clearly it's really difficult to engage in physical transactions right now. Travel is out of the question for many parties in the trade. So the volume of business presumably is very much reduced. So during this pandemic, given that it's going on for some considerable period, what advice or insight can you give, Tony, into how this sector can revive?
Excuse me from plugging Gembridge, but as and when Gembridge is fully functional early next year, obviously our platform would be ideal. It's an online platform which will allow trading. But until that position is ready, I'd have to say at this point, there are very few ways of trading unless you already have that old network of 5 to 10 suppliers and clients who can keep that relationship going now via email, via the phone, without actually meeting each other. And one would hope that that trust is already in place. In other words, if you're a retail shop in Paris and you've got your regular suppliers in Thailand, I'm sure you will be in touch with them and hoping that they might be prepared to send some goods to you on consignment through FedEx or whatever, and try to maintain business that way. I certainly know that there are a lot of artisanal miners in Africa who are still able to sell a certain percentage of their product here in Thailand because they're selling directly with their old clients, and the trust is there. You see, again, it's trust. And now, without trust, our trade is doomed for failure, and that's why I think over the next several years you'll see several platforms similar to Gembridge coming online. As you mentioned earlier, there are 2 or 3 others already coming on board that will facilitate online trading, no risk, or trying to cancel out as much risk as possible to facilitate a continued trading environment that allows that pricing, for instance, is fair. I'm afraid that it's going to squeeze down the margins of the supply chain. I think this is going to happen, but that's part of doing business. And I think one other thing that needs to be mentioned, as Iris mentioned, the millennial markets now, they really want to know where the gemstones came from. Did the miner get a proper payment to it so he can send his children to school? So that's one way, I think, with education, if you will, and the merits of a responsible sourced stone with the costs of trade throughout. I think that might allow that actually margins might stay in place, if you think about it further down the line, to facilitate a fair trade for everybody along the supply chain.
Thank you very much, Tony. There's a question from an anonymous questioner. I think I'd like to split it up into 2, though, this one. Firstly, if I could ask Mr. Sumed, the questioner is asking, how do you attract more companies to get their stones identified and certified? So how would GIT reach out to get more companies to go to GIT and get those reports?
Right. So from my opinion, I think we need to educate the end consumer, right? Because the report, actually, some trader, they don't need the report. They just believe, they just trust in each other. But at the same time, the end consumer, they don't know this. We have to educate them about how important of the identification report, right? At least they have to know to ensure that what they buy, what they get, and they pay for that stone, that product, right? Otherwise, if they got the wrong thing, or someone try to cheating them, so at the end they lose their money, and then sometimes they lose the trust and the confidence in this industry. So I think we have to promote more and educate more for the people who interesting to buy the gem and jewelry. This is the way that trying to promote. And when they have the demand, they require the report from the buyer, so the buyer have to submit the report to them. This is the way.
Absolutely. So the role of the lab group is absolutely essential in instilling consumer confidence, isn't it?
And the lab also have to make the confidence to the consumer. You have to make an accurate report, right? That's why GIT also try to implement the standard, the laboratory standard, and try to apply to everyone in the country as well.
So the second part of the anonymous question I want to direct to Iris, which is, Iris, what should be done to encourage companies to seek out more responsible management practices? How should they be made increasingly aware that they need to follow this route? Particularly, say, if it's a small company in a developing country that may not have access to, perhaps may not be initially fully aware of some of the steps they should be thinking about taking?
Well, I think it's a step-by-step process, and when you are a small business, for example, I would say you can look at the basics, and the basics will be, you know, your employment, knowing where you're buying from. Indeed, you know, very small steps, and you can look at we have a risk assessment online also that you can complete. But I think it starts with the basic insight into your organizations. What are the risks? And if you're a small enterprise, it starts, you know, within your employees, you know, health and safety, then knowing where you're buying from, you know, which countries, so very, you know, small steps of due diligence. I think that because sometimes people see sustainability as, you know, very complex, and sometimes I think, well, it is really the right thing to do. It's really about, you know, certain basics that often is just respect for the law, because sometimes we forget it starts with respecting the law and compliance requirements, and that you can definitely get often also from national government policies with basic guidance. But like I said, I would invite any company to start to look at the code of practices from the RJC and also follow our webinars. We do a lot of webinars and training on different steps of the code, and so I think it's an opportunity to, you know, to learn from the journey, you know, on the journey. So happy if people want to know more information that they reach out to the RJC, and we can definitely share some material.
Thank you, Iris. The next question from Samantha Judd, I'd like to direct to Tony. Tony, how will a buyer know that an individual stone is actually sourced sustainably and in a responsible way? Say on the Gembridge platform, how can a buyer have confidence that a stone they wish to buy has actually come along a responsible supply chain?
Well, that's interesting. One of our first transactions was from one of our members here in Bangkok to a member in Paris. And she has a retail shop. I won't mention any names. And her client, the end user, if you will, had specified that this particular 3-carat sapphire was it responsibly sourced. And indeed it was. We were able to provide obviously a certificate of authenticity. I think it was a GRS certificate, but also the supplier, the member in question, had bought the rough from a trade member in Sri Lanka, who was able to give documentation that this particular stone was mined in Sri Lanka and had gone through the due process. Taxes had been paid, and it was could then basically be linked into a responsible supply chain. Now, that's not always the case. I think we've got one of the big issues that we've got going forward, as we were talking earlier prior to the webinar, is what to do with all these vast amounts of old stock that remain in wholesalers' safes around the world that may have been sourced 30, 40, 50 years ago. At some point in time, again, through the good practices of RJC and the TTJTA and GIT, other associations around the world, I think we will find a way of solving this issue. But at the moment, it is an issue, and it's a very good question that was put. I've tried to answer it, but I feel I haven't quite answered it in full. But that's the best I can suggest at this time.
Thank you. We have a question. I'd like to direct this one to Mr. Sumed. Question is from Lulu Fuad. Hi, Lulu. Lulu says, I'm from Indonesia, and we have good sources of gemstones. What do you think of our products? Mr. Sumed, does GIT handle stones from Indonesia? Do you do much business with Indonesia? Are you looking to extend business with Indonesia?
Actually, like we like trying to serve all the requirement, because at the government gem lab, right? We try to exhibit all the membership and relationship with every country worldwide. Like, for example, like if they have a fair in Indonesia, we also can providing some mobile lab to pick up extend our service and then promote to that country as well. For example, right now we also do a lot of transaction with China. Every time when they have a gem fair or the jewelry fair, we send our people there with all the equipment to do the mobile app.
And presumably, Mr. Sumer, China particularly would be a growing area for you. You expect to do more business with China going forward?
Yes. We also cooperate with many like association in China, and also like some the laboratory there. Like we sharing with them with our experience and some knowledge together with them. Right, we are sharing together. Yes.
Good, thank you. A question from Sheesh Ram Shivrayan, which I'd like to direct to Tony, and particularly as pertains to Gembridge. Given the low prices of some gemstones, will it be viable to have identification of each gemstone?
I think, if I may just mention that at this point in time, Gembridge, we're still in the MVP, which is a test phase. And we have a minimum amount, minimum transaction amount of approximately $7,500.
Wow.
Bearing in mind, this is a B2B, a business-to-business platform. However, that said, we do certainly anticipate over the coming months and certainly years, but hopefully several months, to be able to bring on board stones of shall we say, $1,000, maybe perhaps down to as low as $500 per piece. And indeed, there will be ways and means of ensuring that the stone is still certified. I mean, Kunsumet has already mentioned that they are looking at doing smaller, less expensive reports. They might not be as detailed as other reports. They might not, for instance, have country of origin, which would allow that the cost of that certificate might be as low as $50 to $80. We will have to see. But I think if you're talking about stones down into the $100, $200 range, well, that will be a challenge, yes. But given that, certainly within the Gembridge platform, all of our members have already gone through due diligence, and they're all signatories to responsible sourcing and supply chains. It's incumbent on them to ensure that all their stones are real. It would make no sense for anybody in that environment to be selling anything that wasn't indeed as it's made out to be.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I've got a follow-up question from Avril Groom, who's a very distinguished jewellery journalist whom I've known for some years. Great to have you on board today, Avril, based in the UK. For Tony, presumably Gembridge is totally B2B. So how do you establish it in the consumer's mind as a name to trust when so many people are still wary of coloured stones, provenance, and even reputable jewellers don't always know as much as they should?
Again, a very good question. Thank you. We are indeed at the moment a B2B platform. But as I think I mentioned earlier, by mid next year, mid 2021, we will be moving into a B2C platform. And I would think towards the end of 21, early 22, we would have a complete C2C peer-to-peer trading platform. These will be separate. If a business trader wants to remain in the B2B segment, he can. But if he does want to deal B2C, he would be able to. And obviously the margins will be kept separate. I mean, the costs are kept separate. But at the end of the day, all the members have to go through, again, to repeat myself, the same due diligence, and they have to go through the same protocols, and they will ensure that all the stones have to be independently certified, number one. And number two, before a stone is sent out, it's independently verified. The ISA laboratory here, Ken Scout, a very good friend of mine, has worked with us very closely to put together what I think is a world's first, which is a verification report at a greatly reduced price, but it just ensures that the gemstone or piece of jewelry corresponds to the certificate that was issued, shall we say, in Switzerland or America or wherever. That thus confirms that that particular stone is the same piece that is sent out. Now, once it's sent to the ICA laboratory, it's in custody, and it doesn't leave custody from that point on. From the point it's delivered there, the verification report is made. It then gets sent via Brinks, shall we say, to New York, where the customer receives it, and it's had no opportunity whereby it could have been switched or changed or whatever. So the stone's authenticity is guaranteed across the supply chain and is fully insured throughout. So I hope that addresses the question. I think it does. Certainly, once we move into the B2C segment, the same rules will apply. A piece of jewelry will come in. If it doesn't have a certificate, it will be certified by the ICA lab, or indeed, shall we say, the SSE lab in Geneva, or AGL lab in America, dependent upon where it might be placed. So it will always be fully certified prior to being put up, if you will, onto the Gembridge platform.
If I may ask Iris, do you sense, Iris, that the digital transformation of the coloured gemstone industry in a way can make the RJC's job a little bit easier going forward, because hopefully the trade will become increasingly transparent rather than taking place, you know, out of sight physically?
Well, I think technology is an enabler to be able also to measure progress, what any organization can do. And I thought, David, I wanted to kind of step into the question that was raised to Tony, because when we talk about consumer confidence, I think it's very important that when organizations disclose information about what they're doing on their sustainability efforts, that they're doing this in a correct manner and don't overpromise. I think that we know this is a complicated world. I think COVID has made it even more challenging. I think what we will see is that organizations more and more will talk about what they're doing. And actually what we also need to see is that they can show progress year by year. And when we talk then about sustainability, I think today, for example, we see that survival, employment, you know, within the first direct boundaries is a critical priority. So telling the narrative or telling the story about your organization is important, but I think in a very correct manner. Don't overpromise and based on facts, but also I think you need to be honest about what the challenges are and what the risks are, and then what the actions are that you're taking. And I think those actions rely on different players in the supply chain. So again, I think technology will be a critical enabler on bringing data together, and with data we can show impacts. But I think at the same time, the aspect of, you know, engaging with people, engaging with different stakeholders, virtual roundtables, having that personal engagement will also be mission critical to bring that sustainability message across.
And one last question for you, Iris, if I may, from one of the questioners. What should be the role of regulatory bodies and bodies like the RJC in terms of dealing with the unorganized players in coloured gemstone trading? You know, the small operators in developing countries who maybe are not aware of guidelines and just operate in a sort of a more random way. How do you connect with these so-called unorganized participants in the industry?
Well, when we talk about sustainability, and if we want to make, you know, if you want to make responsible practices work for any industry, you know, you need the role of the government, and you need the private sector, and you need the NGOs. You need to really have a multi-stakeholder collaborative platform. Otherwise, it will not work. I think the RJC can definitely be a player to sit around the table, to have those dialogues, but also again to build upon what we know, what we've learned over those 15 years. And I also want to stay humble. I think that's very important. We still have a lot of work to do, but I do believe we've done a lot, we've achieved a lot, and we can use then the work of the Code of Practices and what we've seen on examples, what works, what doesn't work, what are challenges and the learning curve, and share that. And yeah, I think that's also the only way forward, to bring the public and the private sector much more closer together to tackle those complex issues.
Well, thank you very much. So our hour has now come to an end. I'd like to thank the panelists very much indeed for giving their time today. I think there's a few takeaways. One of them is the importance of trust in the transaction surrounding coloured gemstones. And as the industry moves forward digitally at an ever more rapid pace, ways in which trust can be shown to be present within that transaction are going to be increasingly important. Part of that trust is going to come from the lab, because it has to be trusted for its identification of gemstones. So organizations like GIT are going to be very key in this. And equally, organizations like Gembridge, just starting as an important digital platform for colored gemstones, pearls and jewelry trading, are focusing very much on how to capture trust at every stage of the transaction, both on behalf of buyer and seller. So thank you very much indeed, everybody, for joining us. Delighted that you could have joined us today. Goodbye and stay safe.
Likewise. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everybody. Thank you very much.